So welcome everyone back to the Creator Jump Off podcast. I'm Natalie Mertz, and today I'm very excited to have Sean McVerry on. Hi, Sean.
Hello, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm great. I'm a little cold, but I'm good.
Yes, it is. We are deep in the 111th week of January. Um,
It does feel that way.
I feel like January always feels like that. It feels like 2 months in one.
Well, you're in Rochester, right? I'm
Yes.
gonna
Yeah.
assume it's worse there.
Probably
Yeah.
a bit.
I think it always
Um,
always is at least, I feel like 10 degrees colder than it is in the city.
We got that lake effect coldness happening. And you're in Brooklyn, yeah?
I'm in Brooklyn, I'm in Crown Heights.
Nice. I love Crown Heights. It's a
Me
great
too.
neighborhood.
Yeah, I remember that weekend we had like there's a lot of crossover at that studio weekend of people that were living in Crown Heights or had lived in Crown Heights, but yeah, it's great.
Yeah, yes, I've had some friends live there. I've spent a lot of time there. And speaking of that weekend, I want to share with people how we met because it was awesome. So, over the weekend, our friends Graham Stone and Alex Jensen have this incredible home in upstate New York, and Graham has an incredible studio, like garage turned like legit studio, and invited some folks up for a really lovely weekend of music and performance and nature. And you and I were kind of like I like to say like the special guests of honor because we
Yeah,
stayed.
I think that's accurate.
Yeah. Yeah, we were special. We were besides Alex's family, we were like the only guests who like stayed through the whole weekend. It was a really lovely weekend. We cooked meals together, like when they have an incredible property. And yeah, and I had a really lovely time like chit-chatting with you, and I knew you were a musician, but I hadn't heard your music yet. And then I think on Saturday night they had this really beautiful intimate performance of a few different musicians, and I was like mind-blowingly good. It was so amazing. Everyone was like very each you know musician had like a very different vibe and stuff. And then you came on and playing on the organ, which I love, and doing your original music, and I was just blown away. It was just I don't know. I was just like, oh, I was just like chit chatting with you all weekend and stuff like that. And then I saw you perform, and I was like, holy shit, this guy is
Oh,
amazing. It was so
very
good. And
nice.
then I was sitting next to Lindsay Lucas, who also performed that night,
Mhm.
who's incredible. And her and I were just doing that music nerd thing that maybe you hate, which I'll ask you in a second, of like all the artists that you reminded me of.
Oh, yeah, yeah,
You
yeah.
know what I mean? And so we would, like we were like Bobby Caldwell, and
Oh,
Lindsay would be like, yeah, and
nice.
she'd be like Michael McDonald. I'm like, yeah, and then like
Oh,
there's like a
cool.
Billy Joel vibe there, and I'm like, yeah, yeah, yeah. So
I've never heard Michael McDonald before. That's an interesting one. I do love Michael McDonald.
there was like the songs that you were playing that night. There was like to me like a late 70s white soul kind of vibe or soul vibe,
Sure, sure,
we
sure.
don't have to like bring race into it. Yeah, I mean, I don't think that your voice sounds like Michael McDonald, but it's
Right.
just that like that Doobie Brothers, like him going solo kind of sound.
Sure. Yeah, yeah, totally. Yeah, I think I played mostly stuff off of this Telecoms record, which is like a side project of mine, which is definitely like late 70s power pop is definitely the look and the feel. So that's like an accurate comparison. I would take that.
It was yeah, it was I was like really that whole night was like so magical and lovely. And your performance was it was super fun, and I can't wait for the next one. I'm definitely going to be pressuring Alex and Graham to have another one.
Yeah, no, I wasn't sure
Hopefully
if it was
sooner than later.
if it was gonna be because that was the only one they did over the summer, right? Yeah, that was like a real I
Yeah.
have very, very fond memory of that weekend. Because I also remember it was like was it August we did that? I think it was like August.
Yes.
Think it was like late August. I remember it was like the first time like the heat had sort of broke and like we're like up a couple hours out of the city and it was like 70 degrees and I was like, this is just the best. Also, as long as I've known Graham, he's just like had some like next level hospitality that's been attached to his music operation, so it did not disappoint. It was just a lovely little vacation capped by a really nice little show. It was great.
Yes, absolutely. So yes, so you are a singer, songwriter, musician. Is there other superlatives in there?
I'm a producer. I think musician sort of covers a large umbrella because once we get into like multi hyphenates, it just becomes it's I just start sounding a little insufferable. But yeah, I mean, composer, producer, artist. Artist, I guess, is like the most vague but generalized answer for what goes under music making.
Sure, but you do wear a lot of hats.
Mm-hmm.
Like you definitely produce, you
Mm-hmm.
you write your own songs as well. You also have like a commercial portfolio, right? And
Yep.
then like what instruments do you play?
Um. Well,
Are you looking at them right
I
now?
do have like a huge. It's like kind of you can only see like one symbol, but I mean I have like I'm primarily a piano player, so like any keyboard instruments, but also I play guitar. I play guitar in a few bands, and if you play guitar, you can kind of play bass. I love playing bass, and I can poorly play the drums, and I could poorly play the saxophone, but I can in a pinch if I need to. Yeah, I know a lot. I kind of just sort of um, by nature have just everything and anything I'm kind of just made myself a bit of a one-stop shop for being able to, like, just write and produce and create everything myself, which has been, a fun little journey to go on.
Kind of like a Prince vibe. Like when is a lot of your music you record it solo, so you're kind of like creating all the parts of it?
Yeah, no, that's a good, I would never compare myself to Prince, but I mean, definitely like he's definitely the blueprint for, he was doing like home recording before like everybody was doing home recording. It was kind of an amazing ahead of its time thing. Yeah, I mean, I definitely approach it that way because I am for the most part playing everything on the records except for drums on some songs because I'm not quite there. I'll set up drums and then I'll be immediately frustrated with myself. And I'm like, I forget every time that I cannot really play the drums. And then I'll uh, just have a friend or a couple friends of mine come in and save the day. But for the most part, yeah, it's kind of all me.
That's gotta be fun, it's gotta be kind of liberating too, that you can just go make a track or, like, go make a song from soup to nuts and put it out. Because I imagine I have a few friends who've had bands, or play with bands or move around, and I'm sure coordinating and scheduling is can be really challenging.
Yeah, that's an innate challenge of any band. I mean, I love making records. I love performing live more than anything, and having a band for that is definitely like obviously doing it with my friends and doing it with more people is more fun than just doing it all yourself all the time because it gets a little lonesome and a little uh, you know, if the buck stops at you, you can only get mad at yourself, which is why it's just like could be a little bit mad making depending on what kind of state of mind I'm in. But yeah, I mean, in terms of producing and recording and releasing music, being able to do everything myself is definitely like it's nice. I'm able to move pretty fast and get things done. But definitely have a band for live shows. I definitely love that aspect of it.
Is that telecoms, or do you have
So
another band?
Yeah, so I have my solo project, which is just, my name, and then telecoms was something I sort of started after the pandemic, because I had, like, basically a collection of songs that sort of melded together, but didn't really feel like they felt like a separate idea, a separate thought, and I kind of selfishly wanted to just get all of my friends in a room, to play after, especially coming out of the pandemic. I just kinda wanted to hang out and try some stuff with some pals. And telecoms is like, at its biggest, it's like a 9-piece band of like all my pals and my partner Seneca and my sister Sarah's in it. And yeah, no, it's great. But again, when it goes back to like scheduling and stuff, 9 people is very hard to schedule. But the few shows that we've played and working on that record have been really, really fun. So solo project and telecoms is like my art project, I guess, is the way I've been like sort of thinking about it, compartmentalizing it in my mind.
Yeah, I also love the video that you guys just put out a few months ago. Is it Hanging On?
Hang on, yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
That's Seneca in that video actually, the aforementioned
she's
Seneca.
she's the instructor.
She's the instructor.
It's so fun.
Yeah, it
Everyone should Google "Hanging On" by Telecoms and the music video. It's like this fun, like, Jane Fonda '80s aerobics video, basically.
it's a psychotic workout video. Yeah, that's all I have to, like, shout out Alexa Carroll and Hannah Garner, who directed a video of mine called Maria a while ago. They sort of handled the entire video for the telecoms thing. It's kind of like their brainchild. Like, every, like, 2 years, like, they'll come to me and like, "We got an idea for this," and I'm always like, "You guys just do your thing, and I will show up on the day and tell me where I need to stand." So, it's really nice being surrounded by, like, artists of different mediums that are, like that could see the vision and be like, "Oh, I can just entirely trust them to make something really cool." And that video was great, so everyone check it out.
Yes. It's super fun, and it's interesting, like, it's I feel like the music vibe is a little different than an aerobic vibe, and it's not like Eric Pride's,
Totally, Call on Me.
"Call on Me,"
Yeah,
not at all, you know what I
which
mean? So
another
it's kind
great
of
video.
such a great video, so sexy. Uh, Hanging On is not that, but it's great because it's a little it's a little unexpected for, like, the song, and then, like, an aerobics, like, '80s aerobics vibe, which I love. And I have to say, as a visual artist, my probably my favorite work I've ever done was, like, collaborating with musicians. I had a friend, years ago, who's, like, since passed. He was a producer and a
Mhm.
beat maker, very much like in the vein of, like, Jay Dilla.
Oh, whoa.
Really, really brilliant, and it was really fun. It was like he would share with me music, and then he'd be like, "Just go," and make album art or
Oh,
whatever
that's
for
so cool.
SoundCloud. And it's so fun, and we had, like, a mutual admiration and appreciation for what the other did, and it was a really fun collaboration. So I'm sure, like, with your music videos and, maybe it's kind of similar, just like,
Yeah,
"Oh, this is what you're getting from this song
it is just great.
visually."
It's nice 'cause, like, it sounds like you had a relationship with them that's similar to, like, the relationship I have with Hannah and Alexa or Molly Steislinger, who does, like, all my album art, where it's just like, you don't have to, because I have been in situations where I'm, like, hired to do stuff, and I'm just, like, you're micromanaged to death to the point where, like, what you're making is just like, "Alright, this is not really me anymore, but it's, like, cool for what you need." And it's just really, like, a beautiful thing when you just feel like you're on the same wavelength with another artist that's in a different medium, that you're kind of like, here's my extension of what we're making here. Like, how are you seeing this? And they come back and, especially for Molly, who's done all my album art, it's like, she'll send me back like the first draft. I'm like, that's it. Totally. You get it. Which is like really just like such a relief. It's just like, cause you're like, oh yeah, nice. I'm transmitting and communicating an idea that is clear enough for people to bounce something off of it.
It's a magical relationship.
Totally.
Um, I think about, too, like, I really love, the artwork that Hypnosis did for, like, Pink Floyd and Led Zeppelin, and how, like, crazy it was, and how powerful that relationship can be, right? Like, back in the day, I'm in my late 30s, so there was a time before internet when I was consuming music, and I was just, like, smoke a joint and, like, stare at, like, the CD packaging and
Hell
stuff,
yeah.
and, like, read the liner notes, and, like, you know what I mean? Like, what did this song mean, and what does this lyric mean, and whatever,
Yeah.
and it was really powerful. So yeah, that relationship, like the visual and the music, is, when you find the right match, right? Because it otherwise, yes, it can be a micromanaging, painful.
It could be yeah, painful is the word, because 'cause you're just like, because then it just like, I don't know, it's a risk. It's a risk to try to it's a risk to collaborate, period, with anybody. And, people are understandably very sensitive about their work, myself included. So it's like, if you're met with some sort of like, "That's not quite it. We need to strangle this into something weird and bad." It just can be like a sort of harrowing process. But yeah, no, I've been lucky enough to work with some really great people. Yeah.
Well, I know we've kind of jumped in the deep end. I do wanna circle back to, like, how you got involved in music, but since we're kind of talking about this, I have a question about like collaboration and like how do you navigate that? Like when you're working with a band or any other kind of artistic collaborator and there's those moments that you were talking about where it's painful and like you're not finding the solution per se, like how do you, especially when you're making music, how do you navigate that?
Well, I mean, yeah, let me try to think. I mean, sort of being like the main operator of this project, like, and I have a bit of a type A streak where I'm like kind of have my hands on top of everything, which makes sense for a music perspective. So I haven't had to find myself in position too often where like I am working with somebody where I'm like, this is not vibing, this is not working out, because like I sort of rarely um or I have a very small number of people who I collaborate with uh for music stuff. But I mean I have re-recorded entire projects. The band, again, like the band I'm sort of on a live aspect, like these are people that I've been my best friends, people I've been playing with forever. Like I know that they understand the music, and I also trust them to take liberties and do their own thing. Because there's a certain vocabulary, like vernacular to the music that like they understand. We both understand. So I'm kind of like, all right, well, we're speaking the same language, so like you can feel free to interpret this bass line or guitar part however you want live, and I don't want it to be the same every time. That's kind of what is cool about playing live. Recording music is obviously more difficult because it lives forever. So it's like, um, I think I've worked with producers since I started releasing music as a solo artist, where like I just, even though I was good friends with them, I just knew they didn't really understand what I was going for. To no fault of them, it's just I just was not good at articulating it at that time, and I've been able, and also, as an artist, that you're um, like the goal or the finish line changes depending on what your tastes are at the time. It's like and that's impossible. That makes you an impossible person to work with, especially if it's like an album is being produced over a certain amount of time. Because I drive myself crazy working on an album by myself, where like in June of that year, I love this stuff, so I'm going for that. And then 6 months from then, my tastes have shifted, so I have to like sort of readjust stuff. Um, but yeah, I mean, it's just always constant communication. That is kind of like the what it all comes down to, and clear communication. Because like this is not like it can be a business thing, but like for the most part, there's no point in cutting corners or making unnecessary sacrifices for art, because it's like your stuff, especially if my name is on it. I'm like, I don't feel and maybe it would have been something I would have done in the past because I felt sort of guilty or indebted to people that have put time to work on my music, where I'm like, I'll sort of acquiesce and be like, all right, whatever you think is cool. I don't want to be annoying or anything, but that just isn't the right way to do it. And you just gotta, as an artist, you gotta be an advocate for yourself, even if it's to the people that you're working with, your closest collaborators, because you gotta be like, all right, that's not right. This is what it is. And there's a way to communicate that without being a tyrant or something. But um, again, I've been really lucky. I just feel like at least the last couple of projects I've worked with some people that I got into the room with them initially because I knew they understood it before we even started working on it. And yeah, that's it. Communication.
Yeah, it sounds like yes, communication is super huge. I think like as a visual artist, that's something that was like a hard lesson learned that I just, you know what I mean? Like that's definitely like a skill that takes time, right?
Totally.
And I definitely have been guilty of like, why can't you read my mind?
Right.
Right? Like
Right.
I gave you 5 notes or like I gave you one reference. Like why can't you see what I'm seeing? Um but something else that you said too, like you typically work with the same collaborators. So it sounds like there's a level of trust and familiarity and like like you're compatible and that you guys kind of speak the same musical language How did you find these people?
Well, it takes some time. I mean, I guess an example, um, the Telecoms record was sort of co-produced and mixed by this guy named Abe Seaforth, who's a great, wonderful producer and musician, lives in Brooklyn, has a studio called Transmitter Park in Greenpoint. And him and I had met actually, I sort of reference this, recording like an earlier version of the Telecoms album that I eventually sort of scrapped for various reasons, just in turn and like some of the same songs, but um, I think when it came down to it, I had just not rap. It was right coming out of the pandemic. We started recording in like early 2021, where everyone was masked up, and I think I was just so gung ho on starting something new that I kind of rushed into a record without really understanding the songs myself. Um, Regardless, like him and I stayed in touch. Um, I really liked working with him that day. And then he came out to a few shows of mine, saw it live. And honestly, the difference maker was, apart from him just like being a good hang and a lovely guy, like is that we did a test song together, which was great. But before we even did that, we had like I think one or two hangs where we just did not record a lick of music. We just sort of sat in his studio and just talked and just listened to a bunch of stuff and sort of um kind of conceptualized what a bigger project could look like because I was crafting, I did a lot of the recording in my house and um, crafted like basically skeleton arrangements of all the songs already. But I have limits to what I can do in my home studio versus what he can do in his like really beautiful studio. And it was just nice because I feel like he sort of laid out he laid out his opinion. Because another thing that is like, unless like you are, like a on like the pop trajectory working with like producers that are like they're putting in the room like finding a person, this is all like a voluntarily based like sort of system here, like unless like I mean obviously like everyone's getting paid or whatever, but like you don't, no one has to really take a vested interest or give an opinion on anything unless they want to. And it's like, and what was kind of nice about working with him is that he just had ideas. He had ideas that when I went in there with these songs, and he had a viewpoint of me as an artist, or like how he thought it could work. One that was not too like self and like not imposing on my original concept or idea, but we had that initial hang where he's like, uh, but I see you're doing like a '70s thing. I see you're a piano player. There's something like old school New York sounding about this. And he just kind of laid a few little seeds in my head that helped me like wrap my head around the record. And those initial talks and just hangs, like I feel like we like knew what the rules were going forward. We had developed like this is what the guitarist should sound like and should represent. This is what the drum should feel. And like that was just it made it easier, it made it streamlined. We did the whole thing quite fast after that because it was like we had set the creative constraints up for ourselves and had an understanding.
Beautiful. Yeah. I was gonna say it sounds like you started to make some boundaries around it, which is so hard to do alone.
Yeah.
Right? Like you're kind of just like in the weeds, figuring it out, kind of like going on a lot of gut instinct, but it could be yeah, creative constraint like is definitely super helpful and super important. So I want to ask you like just to like back up
Mhm.
like how talk to me about your childhood, Sean,
Nice.
like how
Childhood.
like let's go back.
How far back?
Um well, I mean, was there do you have like a memory or an experience like of when you were a kid where you were like, "Ooh, I really love music and maybe this is something that I want to pursue," or it was kind of like a light bulb or an aha moment for you?
Um, I don't really remember like a specific moment. I just remember I just made I just made a lot of stuff when I was a little kid. Like I just like did a l- I'm like I just was obsessed with like, you know, connects and I was obsessed with like drawing. I drew like all the time. I drew like comic books and I started taking piano lessons and I wrote like a lot of like weird like fantasy stories like in elementary school. I just was like I just had like thanks to my folks, I think, and also like where we grew up, it was, we kind of grew up in like a cool little wooded area, and I just spent a lot of time outside, and I think I just had like you know, I had a big imagination, and I liked the idea of just building little worlds, and like that, that was through whatever, through, making Legos or Connects or something. I don't know why Connects come to mind. I just remember being like so obsessed with them. I like did like a state fair thing where I built like a 7 foot tall thing, and I was like, I remember being like in even like fifth grade and being like, do I want to be an architect? And then like realizing that I was like atrocious at math even then. And I was like, there's no way that's gonna happen. But my mom put me and my sisters in piano lessons when I was, I guess, in third grade. And I don't know, that felt like, and I think about this a lot too, just like, I feel like I'm always sort of examining why I'm doing this. And I feel like, because I still like making all sorts of things, not only music. And uh, I feel like once I started playing piano and like writing little songs, like that felt like, I don't know, in a way, like the most intangible, but like the quickest way to create whatever little world that I was thinking of. Cause I was just like, okay, I can, I can have, I don't even have to plan or think about this. I can just throw my foot down on the sustain pedal of the piano and play all the black keys. And suddenly I'm like, what is this? Really weird. And I remember like being in piano lessons and like learning the C major scale and like being like, this is a little song. And like, that was it. And like, I remember like, and it was weird because nothing uh, came into focus and, until maybe like I was in high school and I had a band in middle school. And I don't remember why I even wanted to start a band in middle school. Like, I don't know what I was possibly writing about, and horrible band. But like, you know, it was just like another thing that that I like to do. It was just another way to create, and it felt like there was always music in the house. I like to sing, and I was like, okay, this feels like a something I can wrap my arms around pretty easily.
Yeah, what music was playing in the house when you were a kid?
Well, it was my mom's a pianist. Uh, not professionally. She was she's a gym teacher. She's been teaching for, oh my goodness, I think I don't want to get this wrong, but I think almost like 40 years or something. She's been teaching for a long time. Uh, and she would always play she'd play piano for warm-ups for her elementary school gym classes. And like I remember she was always playing in the house and she wanted to get us into piano. My parents would have they still do. They would have like a huge Christmas party like every year. We would have like a hundred people in our house, and my mom would play piano and we do carols, and it was the whole thing. And I remember it, and that's my favorite day of the year, basically. And so there was always that. There was always piano there. Um, we'd always go to church. My dad sang extremely loud in church. He still sings extremely loud in church. And then my mom had all these like 45s of like, Beach Boys records and Beatles records and like some UK garage bands I'd never even heard of before, and Jethro Tull, and just that kind of stuff. My dad had a bunch of Joni Mitchell tapes. Motown was always on, just a lot of stuff. We were exposed to a lot of music because it was just always in the house.
I love that. I feel like that's definitely a through line with a lot of like musicians is music was happening in the house.
Yeah.
Somewhere along the way, I heard that the music that you were listening to in early adolescent, we'll say about like around 12 or 13,
Hmm.
kind of shapes and dictates a lot of your music taste for the rest of your life. I'm sure it's not black and white. I mean, for
Sure.
me, it was disco. Like that movie 54 came out,
Yeah.
and I got the soundtrack, and
Yeah.
I still listen to it. Like
I
I've
mean,
just been obsessed with disco ever since. Was there a real pivotal album, or song or artist
first of
that
all,
really hit you?
I heard that too, and I don't know if you were listening to Paul Simon on Jason Bateman's podcast, but he was talking about that.
Oh, okay,
So
cool. No.
maybe it's just been coming up a lot. It's funny. I heard that same thing like a couple of days ago, and honestly, I think it was like I have such a I was listening to like a lot of stuff in middle school, Like that's what in middle school and high school was like when I was getting like classic rock and stuff like that, and I got Led Zeppelin and stuff like that, and I was listening to a lot of it. But honestly, the most like turning point era of music for me was probably like freshman year of college. It was like a little later, I think, because I was like dropped into an art school outside of New York, and I was just like, just floodgates were open to every band that ever existed. And I was like, "Oh, I just don't know anything." I was aware that I was living growing up in a little bubble where I grew up, but, like, I was not aware of just how small that bubble was because I was like, "Oh, wow. I'm overwhelmed with the amount of incredible stuff that exists." Um, yeah, that was, like, 2008, 2009, like, indie rock music.
Any artists that come to mind?
Yeah, I mean, I just have very visceral memories of, like, hearing, like, Grizzly Bear for the first time or Fleet Foxes for the first time or even, like, this is actually in high school. I remember, like, having, like, The Strokes for the first time or even, like, especially in middle school, um, uh, like, writing music on piano and, like, the obviously, the go-to artists that people would grab would be like your obvious Billy Joel or Elton John or whatever, because they're piano guys. I remember like Ben Folds Five coming into focus when I was like a junior in high school and being like, oh wow, this is a different thing entirely. There's a different way. You don't have to write like only sappy love songs. You can write weird, angry music on piano. And I remember that was like kind of illuminating. And then like maybe just getting like, too deep into that where I was just basically like writing rip off Ben Folds songs. So then by the time I got to college, I was like, "Oh, there's so much weird stuff that's, like, being made right now that I have not even heard before." Yeah, so I don't know. It's that is freshman year of college is, like, a very pivotal time for music discovery for me, like, definitely a turning point.
Yeah, I think I had a second musical spiritual awakening during college as well. This was like pre-Spotify, but I had Pandora, and so it would just like put on stuff, and that also has like shaped a lot of what I listen to, what I enjoy since then. Um, so you said you went to art school. Um, what did you study?
I studied it was a program called Studio Composition, and it was basically, like at SUNY Purchase where I went, they had, studio production and then studio comp and then classical composition. So it was like Um, studio comp, the best way I can explain it, it was like essentially like it was a composition degree, but it was pushing more towards contemporary or like pop music, for lack of a better word. It was a very sort of amorphous degree. Like you can kind of try as hard as you wanted to, or get as much out of it as you wanted to. I really enjoyed it. Yeah, it was like a very small program. There's like only like 8 people that were in each class. They actually lost my audition CD, so in the mail. So I was the last person to audition for my class. Otherwise, like I very nearly was going to be like a music education major at like Western Connecticut State University, and then they found it, and I was like, oh my god, thank God, and got in. And it was a very very different kind of place for me, which I really enjoyed.
Yeah, talk to me a little bit about that experience and this program and college.
Yeah, I mean, I remember joking at the time that like Purchase was like rock and roll summer camp or something. It was just like, we had a couple professors that I really, really loved, but I mean, it's quite a small school. It's in White Plains. I remember it being like a 35-minute train ride to Manhattan, which was huge. And yeah, I remember getting because I applied everywhere else I applied. It was for music education or classical voice, which is completely bizarre in hindsight. But I remember like that was the one like composition program that I saw that kind of spoke to me because I wasn't really um I didn't have like classical composition in mind. Like I wanted to find a way to write songs. I knew NYU existed. I knew that there was a program at Berkeley. I wasn't crazy about the idea of going to Berkeley, just because I knew I wanted to be in New York. Um, and Purchase was just like it was just a different place. I felt very, um, yeah, I felt like I really found my people there. It was weird. Not that I was like, I had a very sort of normal high school experience. I mean, I tell my girlfriend about my high school experience, and she like says it sounds as like a like an after school special, which it kind of was. Now that I think it was like real, like the football team is king. You know, we had the scandals after I graduated. It was like a whole thing. I played football, which I enjoyed, and I also was in jazz band, which is like a really weird combination. But once I got to Purchase, it was just like, oh yeah, of course, yeah. I just immediately found my friends and my people, and I felt very understood. And it was yeah, I remember getting dropped off at orientation, and I don't I hope they still do this, but I remember like when you drive in for orientation, they just have like they had like 7 or 8 drag queens welcoming everybody into the school, and I remember just being like, I'm like, this is yeah, I'm just, it's like half the school is populated by people that went to LaGuardia and New York City. It's like everyone is mostly from the New York City area. Um, I just immediately met, a bunch of weirdos who I'm still really, really good friends with. And it was just like all walks of life and just like a complete culture shock uh, for the better. And I just, yeah, I felt very fortunate uh, to go there and just basically spent all day, all night, working on music, learning about music, playing shows. I remember I started, like, immediately taking the train into the city to play shows, going to, like, open mics at, like, 2 in the morning in the Lower East Side just so we can get, like, a Wednesday night at 7 p.m. gig or something. Um, but yeah, no, I came out of there with, like, some of my closest friends. I've had some people, with kids that are college age, like, asked me about Purchase, and I'm like, is unlike any place that I've ever been, or like, especially visiting my friends that like went to like big schools. It was like, this is nothing like Purchase. Purchase is like, it's sort of a singular experience in my mind. Yeah.
That's beautiful. It sounds like we had a similar experience. I went to School of Visual Arts in
Oh,
Manhattan,
okay. Yes.
and it was a complete school of misfits. It was small. Um, I remember going in for orientation. There was no drag queens. That is amazing.
It was cool.
I love that so much. Yeah, my orientation, there was no drag queens, but it was just this wonderful chaotic energy. Like everything was kind of a shit show and it didn't feel institutional at all. Like all the walls were different colors. And also it helped too that like I got to study with my heroes and stuff, but have made like lifelong friends, lifelong collaborators. It was like a truly like a life-changing experience. For you at Purchase, was there something, is there like an anecdote or a story or something that like that really has stayed with you that has really like helped you in your career or in your life, something maybe that you've learned from a professor or
Um, I guess from like there's countless of just like little gems in terms of just like creativity and stuff and learning how to a big thing was just like learning how to not rely on um moments of inspiration to generate work because like that was like that's something that's so fleeting and it's like if you're sitting around waiting for that it was a lot of professors sort of it's because there's a misconception that or maybe not a misconception there's a held belief I think that like learning more about a craft sullies the craft in a way at least for music people are like the more I understand about it it's going to lose the magic I'm not going to be able to do it if I understand it which I was worried about, I guess. I mean, I had sort of studied music throughout high school too, but the thing that like that was always sort of enforced is that like this is just you're here to like build a tool belt of things to call upon for when like that, little spark of inspiration like flies over your head. You can just like take advantage of it. Or when it's not there, you could kind of go out into the dark and use the skills you have to conjure something up. And yeah, like treat it like a craft, treat it like any other art form, where you can just sit down and make something. A practical thing that I learned there that really helped. I remember when we were, and this is also just like a kind of a bizarre anecdote too, but when we were, I had a band senior year, and I worked at the Performing Arts Center, beautiful Performing Arts Center at Purchase. And the late great Joan Rivers came through town, and she had she would have a band play with her at her show. And because I worked at the PAC, they knew that I had a band, and it was like a big band, it was a 6-piece band, like horns and pianos and stuff. Obviously, I was playing piano, but and we played for her. We accompanied her. I had like lift her onto a piano. We had to do all these bits and stuff. And I remember going to I wish I wish I remember this woman's name in the PAC because she was like, "All right, what's your rate? What's the rate for the band?" And I was like, I'm a senior. We don't know. I don't know anything. I'm also just like, we would have done it for like a case of beer, maybe. And I was like, and
Yes.
and I was like, I don't know if I can pay the guys like $100 each. And she was like, let me just tell you. She's like, anytime anybody asks you for anything, just giving them a fee, say $10,000 and then laugh. Because if you laugh and it's outrageous, you can be like, they'll know you're joking. But if they don't laugh, then maybe they'll just give it to you. And I was like, that is sage advice. And
I love that.
I think about that a lot in the world of freelance, where like the rates and the fees are an ever evolving, chasing thing. It's like, you know what? Like, it doesn't matter. It's not a personal thing. Like, you gotta aim for what you can get. And yeah, that is something that I think about a lot, especially just because the Joan Rivers thing was just like a weird, unbelievable gig.
That's amazing. I love that anecdote. And I love that idea. Maybe I'll try that. $10 grand.
It still sits well. It's like, it's of course, yeah, like, what's the worst that could happen?
Right, right. Very important. Like I talk to clients about this all the time of like, what's the worst thing that could happen if you just ask for what you want? They
Yeah.
say no, or you negotiate, right?
Yeah,
Like
exactly.
there's always room for negotiating. So you might as well aim a bit high,
Sure.
anyways, and take it from there. I love that. So, talk to me about like after you graduate. So it sounds like during school, you're coming into Manhattan, you're doing open mics, like trying to find gigs and stuff like that. Once you graduated, like what did that look like? And I'm assuming like because of what you studied and your you know interest in music, was the idea to be like a working musician?
Yeah. Yeah, I think that was it. I didn't really have any great plan other than the plan that I have now, which is just like put out music and hope to tour and do some film scores and try to just make a life of it. That was it. There was not really any greater. I mean, yeah, graduate and like the initial thing is like I have to get a record deal, and like that, that was the thing because that was also a different getting a record deal when I graduated college was like a different. It was a different landscape. I mean, the music industry is changing every month now, so it's hard to imagine like what is beneficial for anybody anymore. But um, yeah, I sort of moved. I went home for 2 months, and then I moved to Brooklyn and crashed on a friend's couch, and I thought that was gonna be a temporary thing. I think about that a lot, like, where, like, my mom I remember my mom dropped me off with, like, a weekend bag, and I was like it's unbeknownst to her and I, like, that was it, and I've been here for 10 years, and it's just, like, such a weird like, that's just, like, a bizarre sentimental memory. I'm just kinda like, "I'm gonna go stay on Anthony's couch in Bushwick for a couple of weeks." And then a couple of weeks turned into 6 months, and then suddenly I was like, "I need to get an apartment." And then I was just moving up with a few of my friends at a horrible place in Bushwick. Um, and yeah, it was the first couple of years. I mean, how do you want me to do this? I want to just talk about the first
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
I'm curious how you got started. You moved to Brooklyn. New York is a music town.
It is.
Yeah, and like how did you get gigs? Like what did that look like in terms of making music and
Yeah.
whatnot?
Uh, well, it was like kind of a weird shakeup because I had my band in college, and there was like sort of a we all graduated. Some of us moved to the city, some of us moved just around, and it was sort of like a question mark of what we were going to do. And we sort of like dissolved the band, and I was like, all right, I guess I'm gonna try to put some music out solo. Try doing this like as a solo thing, and yeah, I was living with a good friend and a producer of mine who was like working on some music of mine and crashing in his couch. And yeah, for the first like year, I was just like, all right, let me put together whatever my thing is going to be. And I was learning how to produce my own stuff. I had ideas. I was working with him. He was like primarily a hip hop producer. So it was like kind of a funny, like him and I had like a, it was just like it wasn't a tough working relationship. I love him, and but it was just like it was both of us trying to figure out what it was, what we were doing. And then I remember, having the realization of like, oh, I need to move out. I need to get a job. I need to get an apartment. And I remember like I got a job at a music publishing company, like working like 3 days a week for most certainly under minimum wage, like for a woman that I worked for like over a summer in college. And then I auditioned at a piano bar in Midtown that ended up like being like a thing I did for like a couple of years. A place called Don't Tell Mamas, where I was, it's like a cabaret bar. A wild, weird place. And I would work there as what they called the break pianist. So I only work Saturday nights, and I would go in at midnight, and I would play and sing for like an hour and a half or like an hour, not even long at all. And then they'd pass a bucket around. I would take that home, and then that'd be it. Mind you, I was only paying $600 for rent at the time, so, like, that was a manageable, like, amount of money for me. Uh, and yeah, I just did that for a couple years while, like, putting together, a record of my own. I had a manager who I worked with for a couple of years, and then him and I stopped working together for various reasons, and, all the trappings of being a young artist, and I did some showcases for some labels and played some shows, and I was simultaneously trying to do as much as I could while not really knowing what I was doing. And I think as time went on, I sort of uh, defined my sense of self, and also started to meet musicians I didn't go to college with, and made some new friends. And yeah, there's just so many living in New York, as I'm sure you know, is just like there's just so many seasons, not only the actual seasons, but like seasons with people and seasons of eras and interests. And um yeah, yeah, the first couple years are a real blur, as I'm sure they are for you too when you went to college here. But I remember like trying to, when I first moved here, at a journal, and I take journals like everywhere. I have a billion journals, and I had one that was dedicated to just writing down basically like it was like a video game, like character profiles of everybody that like every new person that I was meeting, and it just got completely overwhelming. I did it for like 1 month, and I was like, all right, there's like 1,000 people. Uh, and which I sort of like that idea. I wish I kind of kept up with that, but as a little artifact. But yeah, I found new people. I started playing shows, and yeah, at a certain point, I quit the publishing company. I worked there for like 2 years, and I was like, "All right, I'm here, and I'm gonna go just sort of full in. I'm here for a reason. I'm here to just try to make this music thing happen, and I should try to like take a leap and see if I can tour with some bands and make this work." And it's kind of what I've been doing ever since then.
Amazing. I do wanna, like, kind of underline something that I've been thinking about that I wanna write about, is being obviously, like, with the internet and there's so much accessibility now, like, you don't have to get a record label, right? You know what I mean? Like, there's so many people who are self-published, or, they I don't know, whatever, they're just kind of making stuff on their own. As much as there is that accessibility, I think that there is a value of like going to where your people are, or where where things are happening. So like for you, that was New York. You knew you wanted to be in New York. It is a music town. Like there's lots of venues and gigs to be had. Like there's music production there. For me as a graphic designer, probably that's the best place for me to be, like, literally in the country or just another large city.
Sure.
Um, but just I think too, like, proximity can really help a lot, and just, like,
Totally.
meeting people and making connections, and also making, I probably made much better connections and had much better job opportunities as a designer, in New York than I would like in upstate New York or in the middle of the country or something like that. So I don't know. I just wanted to like kind of point that out too of like sometimes it's not 100% required,
Mhm.
you know what I mean, to be a creative, but it does help, or even stay connected. Like I'm up in Rochester now, and there's a huge music scene here. Like there's
Totally.
Eastman. I know, a bunch of
Tons of
musicians
friends up
here.
there.
Yes, yeah. But I still like to stay connected to New York. And even still, when I come to New York, even just for a weekend, I still meet incredible people. You just finished a tour, right?
Yeah, I was out for, most of November and some of December.
How was it?
It was amazing. It was great. I mean, it's like that's my favorite thing to do. Um, yeah, I mean, I have toured. I think I went on my first tour in like 2016. 2016, I think I went on tour like 3 times, and then like from 2016 to the pandemic, I toured a bunch, and then the pandemic stopped that, and then this is the first time I've been out um, since the pandemic, and also the first time I'd been out like with my own band, like opening up for a band in a while, and also like on my own accord. I have supported and, like, opened up for other bands on the road, but usually it's been through, like, me specifically asking them to do that and also playing in the headlining band, which is, like, fun. Fun because I don't have to worry about travel because, like, in those instances, I've been able to just, like, travel on the bus, and it's just a nice thing. But this time, it was like, rent a car, bring my friend Zeno, and we just drove across the country opening up for this band, We Are Scientists, who are a band I actually was a fan of in college. Lovely, lovely. I'm seeing them tonight. But it was amazing. Yeah, no, I had really, um, as someone that spends most of his time by myself in my studio working on stuff, and I enjoyed this, obviously. I feel like I am at like my highest functioning level when I'm like on tour or at like working at that pace because it's like so furiously paced. And for some reason, I just feel like I'm very apt for it. Like I mentally just do very well in that environment. Uh, and yeah, no, it was just really, really great. I love traveling. I love meeting new people. And the shows are just really, really nice. It was really cool to play. Because you put these records out and you're just not sure. I mean, obviously, I always play shows in New York, but like getting the opportunity, it's like sometimes, especially because I put some music out over the pandemic that just I will never be played live. And any opportunity that I get to go out and play these songs, I'm like, very grateful. And this especially was just like so easy. I was playing with my best friend Zeno, and we shared a drummer with We Are Scientists. This guy named Keith Carnes. There's the three of us, and whole lot of driving. We drove, man. Oh my god, we drove from Pittsburgh to Portland, Oregon, and then we flew home. Or we drove. Honestly, we drove from New York to Portland, Oregon, and then we drove. We met them back in Nashville, and then went up the East Coast, and we finished right before Christmas. So it was just like I'm still feeling like the post tour blues because you get back home, and then suddenly it's just like very quiet and very like, oh yeah, because when you're out there, it's just like high frequency, high everything, and you're kind of like, yes, 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 yes.
That sounds amazing, and I think I understand. I've not been on tour or anything like that, but, I there's periods that I have, like, where I'm on, and, like, talking to people or, like, recording podcasts or whatever, and then there's periods where I don't I just wanna be a turtle and
Totally.
hermit away. Um, is there when you're on tour, I would imagine there's not really time to create. I'm sure it's just like you're driving and then you're prepping for the gig and then you're playing the gig and then you're packing up.
Yeah. I mean, not a lot of time. Especially, I mean, there's, especially if because Zeno and I were splitting the driving, so not a lot of time to um to create. Really, I definitely was documenting stuff, and I was still trying to write down a lot of things and journal a lot. But I think my producer that I referenced before is a guy named Anthony Perino. His father, George Perino, was a professor at Purchase, actually, a visual arts professor. Legendary dude, great guy. But I say all that because his dad and Anthony instilled this thing that his dad would talk about called just like the idea of input output as an artist. So like while I was not able to create on tour, I just feel like I was just getting massive amounts of input, which is like just as useful. Whether it was just like um, seeing We Are Scientists play every single night. We saw a bunch of films. We were out on the road, meeting people, but just also just like taking in the immense and bizarre natural beauty of everywhere we were driving. Like, I still, like, just have so many just distilled moments in my brain from, like, these massive, like, wind farms driving through Kansas, or, like, I'm just like, "Oh my goodness." I don't know. That kinda stuff, it's like that while I was not actively writing stuff, I feel like I got home and this has just been, like, the most productive musical month that I've had in, like, so long, just because I feel like I got home and I was like, "Ah!" Like, I was just, like, absorbing everything, and now I'm just like, "Oh, yeah." Uh, this has been I've been building up my meter, over the last, like, 2 months.
I call it filling the well up,
That's
just
totally
like
it.
there's time where it's like I just need to like and traveling certainly does it for me too. Just like getting really inspired and being in a new environment, you know what I mean? So it like kind of breeds new thoughts and new
Yeah.
things kind of come to mind. And then coming home feeling really like refreshed and like excited to write or create or whatnot. If I could ask you a really nerdy question? I don't know if it's
Ask me
nerdy or
you can
whatever,
ask me any
but,
question.
so I am obviously not a musician, and I'm curious, like, how did you get into touring and, like, what is involved with coordinating a tour? Because that sounds like a lot of admin.
Yeah, I mean, luckily, I have had to do almost none of it. But I mean, it is a lot of I mean, so I did like a DIY tour when I was in college, and I've done a couple of DIY like weekend tours, and all that basically is like cold email a billion venues in various towns, and they're like, yes, you can play on Thursday. No, you cannot play on Thursday, or like and they're like, all right, we'll be there on Thursday, and then but for something like a nationwide tour, like luckily. Uh, in a perfect world, you work with a booking agency, and your agent. I mean, we were obviously working with We Are Scientists, so they had their agent who's like, a big. He's like at CAA or something. He is, uh, and they're just coordinating all that stuff in terms of like the tour routing and all that stuff. I mean, the admin portion of it that was like I don't know. None of it was bad. I actually can't. I think like I think if it was like my 90th tour or maybe like my 15th or 20th, I'd be like, this is grating. But I was just so excited that anything felt fine. Like the one, like I guess like taxing, tedious part is that basically you have to email the production coordinator of every single venue with basically the exact same email, which is just like, this is how many people are here. This is what our stage setup looks like. This is what we need from you equipment wise. This is what we're bringing, see you in a couple of days. Or like, this is how we would like to be paid. But that's all done in like one email. I guess again, there's also just a lot of like stuff that I didn't think about when I was like not handling all the transportation, like renting a car and figuring out if we can drop it off at an airport and how many hours we would have to drive after a show so the next day wasn't like a horrible drive. Because there's a couple of like extremely long stretches on this first run. Like we went from like Kansas City to Denver and then Denver to Salt Lake City, like 10, 11-hour drives. So it was like a lot of like, all right, how do we and again, like, I just think we crushed it. Like, it's like because you can do it poorly, but also this I feel like, I feel like once you get your late 20s, like early 30s and you're touring and you've done it before, like, you just know what you're doing. And it was nice, especially because I was, like, with Zeno, who's, like, a total pro, and him and I were just like, we're eating healthy, we're waking up early, we're playing the show, like, we know what we're doing, like, we're, like, having time to, like, go check out sites, like, I feel like when I was touring in my, like, early 20s, and obviously it was a blast, like, there's no way I would have been able to do it. We would have been late to every show because we would have been like, "We have to go out after the show and drink 35 beers each." So it's just not I mean, there's a lot of there are a lot of, like, weird, um little detail-oriented things that I learned about, going out in this last run, but, I relish and enjoy every part of it because 'cause I'm kinda like, I love planning things. So I'm just like, "Okay, cool. Like, we have our spreadsheet. Let's go."
I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think there's something about there's a time for, like, the business side or the admin side, and then I think for myself and probably a lot of creatives is like being in it, right?
Mm,
Like so when you're on tour, you're performing like you're in it,
yes.
and that's like the part that is feels so good and feels so natural.
Yes.
So you mentioned like you've come back from tour, like you're coming down, but you're super inspired. And I saw on Spotify you've been releasing songs weekly on
Mhm.
this Menagerie album. Do you wanna talk about that, or like where what you're working on right now, where you're
Sure.
at currently?
Yeah, so, that record, so I guess, like, over the course of 2021 and 2022, I was, like, very active on TikTok, like, making, I had a series that I was doing, and I'll occasionally still do it, where, like, people would throw an adjective out and they'd be like, make a song that's like this, that's fuzzy or crunchy or saucy or silly. Not silly. Silly didn't come up yet, but stuff like that. And essentially, like, I started doing a few of them, and then like the algorithm hit, and then things started doing really well. And I made like 82 or three of them, like a lot of them, and some of them I finished and put out like full-fledged songs, but a lot of them, for the most part, it was just like, and this is what I'm trying to get back to with that, application, is just like a lot of them were just one-off creative challenges or just like writing challenges or production challenges or like, just like daily little exercises, that I wasn't gonna finish, and Zeno, who I mentioned before, who actually masters a lot of my music, him and I had talked, and we've seen other bands sort of do this thing where it's like, if you have a big catalog and you're a musician that's not signed to a major label or have freedom of your publishing catalog and but don't have like massive resources to afford you like big PR or something, it's like this could be a workaround to that, or like, or you have the ability to move fast or be experimental with your release strategy, because if you're on a label, it's like, um you have you're gonna put out one album a year, it's 10 songs a year, which is not a lot, and then if like, well, if you know four of them don't hit, then it's kind of like this is a waste, especially if you're making a lot of stuff, and like I have the freedom to kind of do that, like, kind of just put out more, and it's all, like, good enough, I feel like. So it was funny, but I will give props right back to Zeno because, like, I'm very nervous about that, and a lot of artists that are also independent or working with small labels that don't have, like, major banks, they still will sort of operate the way a major label does, where it's like, doesn't really make sense to me. It's like, because if I don't know why we would operate the same way if we don't have like millions of marketing dollars, or like, it's like I don't understand, like, you're praying for a Spotify playlist, and if it doesn't happen, then you're like, I guess we're I guess we're screwed. But like, so this is kind of just a nice, Zeno, I sent him all the songs and he just sequenced them into an album and mastered them, and I listened to it, and it's like, they're all like a minute long, so it's not a long album, but we have 52. We have enough to get through the year. It's all done.
Wow.
And I listened down to it, I'm like, "This is really fun and feels oddly like one of the better representations of me that I've heard," which is like, because it's all over the map, the tone is similar just because it's me. I'm also just not taking a lot of them that seriously, which actually sort of makes it a little more approachable, I feel like. And, yeah, no, it's just been a nice thing the joke is like I'm putting a song out a week, I'm not really promoting it very much, so I just have something to keep people entertained on Spotify while I work on the next, like, serious project, but yeah, no, it's been cool. We've been uploading, I mean, I have, like, the next 3 months all set, which is kinda wild, um so that's been that, but it's funny because that's not like an active creative thing for me because those songs are already done. But something that we've been doing, and it's happening tonight actually, is that a group of us have something called the Song Challenge, which this is actually how I met We Are Scientists. Them and a group of other musicians, Annie Hart and Doug Marvin, people from Williamsburg and Ridgewood and stuff. They started doing this thing where like, once well, it's become once a week now. Once a week, basically, you have to write and record as many songs as you can in a day. And that night, everyone gets together and we round table play every song and discuss. And it's been a great motivator, um, to just get a ton of songs written. And also just it's always a really fun hang. So yeah, those 2 things have just kinda like have ignited a good stretch in me. I mean, I'm prolific normally, like I write all every day for the most part, but, like, I think this month, song challenge paired with being back from tour, paired with, new year, new me vibes.
Yes.
We're just writing a bunch of stuff, and it feels,
Yeah.
yeah, so it's been
Sounds like
cool.
hella productive.
Yeah, it's been
I,
nice.
um I love the menagerie, project that you're doing, like, you're releasing music. It's already made, but I love the idea too, like, of just, like, just putting stuff out there, right? And, like, and having some kind of consistency and giving your audience an opportunity just to listen to more, right? And absorb more. I
Yeah.
think, like, I still love albums. Like, I think
Oh,
I'll
me
I'll
too.
always be an elder millennial and, like,
Yeah.
still really love to listen to a good album from front to back. But I think things are changing, like, in terms of, like, how we listen to music and stuff. So that seems quite conducive for, I think, where, like, the music industry is going.
Mhm.
Um, I love that song challenge too.
Yeah, song challenge is cool, but I mean, to speak on the album point, like, I still prefer to, like it goes back to the what we were talking about before with me being a kid and just wanted to make little worlds and stuff like that is what an album is, and that's, like, why I like making music because I like being like, "Alright, let's create the box in which all these songs live." And that is sort of become, like, where I think that's, like, what telecoms is sort of becoming for me, is, like, as the aforementioned art project, where I'm kinda like, it's not an album market anymore. I still love making albums, though, and I will make albums for my solo project too, but it's like, for my own solo project, if I can go experimental and, put out a billion songs and feed the small fan base, that's cool. And then when I want to make albums and be cool, then I'll do the telecoms thing.
When you make an album, is it do you have, like, a central concept that you're kind of building around? Can you
Yeah,
can you talk about that?
usually. Well, it's like, it's again sort of a moving target thing, but a lot of times it'll be as simple as, it always starts from constraint or, like, lyrically, usually it won't be from, like, I won't do, like, a concept album lyrically because lyrically it's like it's no telling what I'm gonna wanna write about, but I could wrap my head around it if I'm like, "I want it to be this kind of record or feel like this." And a lot of it will even come back to, like, instrumentation. Like, "Alright, the only thing allowed on this next record is piano, 1 guitar, bass and drums. That's it. Everything else is gonna be to the wayside, and now that's our starting off point. Um, and then I'll be, compile things into a playlist of references that I'm digging. Um, and yeah, I mean, I'll just take a ton of notes and I'll write a lot, and I'll be like, all right, this is, and I'll have that filling the well period. And be like, okay, nice. We want the album to feel like this Coen Brothers movie. You know what I mean? Or like something like that as an example. It's like, um, and yeah, and then the challenge becomes like working on it and trying to remain within the constraints as I absorb new things, and as I take on new things because within reason without being too constrictive on myself. But the trappings are like, and I'm at least aware of myself at this point enough to like no, I perpetually will, like, be working on a record, and then I'll hear, like, a great new song, and I'll be like, "The record just needs that kinda song," and then that will, like, repeat every week for a couple weeks. I'm like, "I need to stop." If only I had a song as good as, "Eleanor" by the Turtles, or that's a bad example, but, like, like, one of those, I'll hear, like, a genius song by the Kinks, and I'll be like, "I need to write that one," and then, um but yeah, you set up the guidelines to break them, but it's nice to have them up to like to help define what it is. And with telecoms, it's more like the project is the concept. It's like, all right, like I know now I'm like listening back to a bunch of songs that I've written the last 2 months, and I'm like, okay, now I can see that 3 or 4 of these are telecom songs. The other ones could be mine.
Gotcha, because you've kind of defined, like, a sound or just a concept for telecoms
Yeah.
itself. Cool. So right now it seems like you're quite inspired. You're the well is filled and you're making music and stuff. But what does it look like, when you have a writer's block? Some I don't know, creative philosophers don't say they don't believe in writer's block, but
Mm.
if there's times where it's challenging, or the music just isn't coming, or it's, you know what I mean, it's just not like flowing. Like how do you navigate that?
I don't navigate it very well, if I'm being totally honest. Like, uh, it's it's something I'm learning to deal with because, as a freelancer, the days are mine. So I'm just kind of like for the most part. And yeah, that can get into some like murky mental territory. And sometimes it feels like, yeah, I could feel like sort of like a waste of time, especially if I'm not having good ideas. Like, what am I doing this for? Which is just, and then, but you know, to to get myself out of that whole thing, usually the answer is like very obvious. It's like, well, let's do like the tactical surface level, chart here. Am I like sleeping, or am I on my phone way too much, or am I getting exercise, or am I, and like usually like I'm very obviously doing way too much of that or not enough of that. Like either I'm like, I'm on my phone every day on Instagram. Of course I feel like horrific. Or like I'm like eating breakfast at like 8 o'clock and then not eating again until like 7:30. Like, of course I feel horrible. Or like I haven't been to the gym in a week. It's like there are enough like um I know it's funny. It's like all these things feel obvious, but it's and then but it's hard. It's hard to maintain. It's part of the thing. That's like why it's like an all encompassing thing. And I feel like, yeah, when I have a blocker, I'm not feeling well. It's usually like I need to, and especially like because if I have a block, my brain will go to a much more existential cosmic place where normally I just need to like have a snack and go for a run. That's like
Yes.
usually what gets me out of it.
Yes, I 100% agree. It's like uh yeah, I have that too. I think like in general, I know for myself, I've learned, like I think of creative projects um in terms of like at the beginning of it, I'm like on top of the mountain or something, and it's like I can see to the other peak, right? Like I can see where I'm going. I'm so excited. It's gonna be fucking awesome. And then I start walking down the hill, and then in the middle is like the valley, and I can't see shit, and it's awful, and it's dark and cold, and I'm hangry and I need a snack, and you know what I mean? And like I'm like, this is awful. I want to bail. And then usually at that point, for me it's like stepping away. Like I just need to step away. And like you said, like maybe I need to eat something or go to like go for a walk, or like phone a friend or something, or just, you know what I mean? Like just sleep on it and then come back. And that's kind of like generally like, I'm able to kind of like walk back up the hill and finish it and whatnot. But yeah, I completely relate. Like I bet, January's new me, new year, new me.
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
I've
yeah.
been doing like I'm doing this whole like
Intermittent fasting.
detox. Yeah. Intermittent fasting, detox. It's been really lovely. But the days that I have a really long fast, um, I'm really cranky.
That's
And
hard.
I will say it took a week to figure this out. Like
Yeah.
it took a week of like me in my head, like just being really mean.
Yeah, no,
Just
that's
thinking
very
really mean
normal.
thoughts.
Yeah.
And then I was like, "Natalie, what's going on? Why are you thinking all these really hateful thoughts?" I was like, "Oh, I'm hungry.
Yeah, no, it's amazing what
I'm
what
doing
what the
something
body can
different."
do.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's especially since I've seen success on TikTok, like there is a part of my brain that's always like you always could be doing something, which is like that's tough. That's tough especially if I'm like not in a good mental place or physical place. Like, but having a block and stuff, like I'm trying to make my initial knee jerk reaction to having a block or not feeling up to just like be a little bit more tender with myself because, like, you know, it's easy to be very, very mean to yourself. It's just it's too easy, especially if you know that. And like, I don't think it's that tendency is completely a bad thing because that, in a way, it signals that you know that you are capable of greatness. But and it's like, but that also like when that person becomes a little too large or a little too looming in your brain, it's hard to move. So it's like, all right, maybe I know that I can do good stuff, but right now I need to watch a movie and then have a snack.
Yes. The
Usually
key
snacks kind of
yes. The key is snacks, kids.
yeah, we need snacks.
Yeah, I think it's a I think it's a f a gentle balance. Like, I definitely find for myself too of, like I have that anxiety, and I for myself, I like to contribute that to being a New Yorker, of just, like, that anxiety of, like, I should be making more money and doing more things and talking to more people, whatever, like, um, I don't think I had that kind of, like, am I doing enough anxiety before I moved to New York? But, that balance of, like, okay, I've done the best I can today, or I've done kind of all that I can. And of course, I could do 1,000 other things too, but maybe I don't. Right. And like you said, like maybe it's time to go watch a movie, or like maybe it's sit back. And I do believe too, like it's good for me, right, to just like step away, take a break for like my brain and my body or whatever. But also, I think, if we're bringing it into the woo woo realm of like allowing the universe or whatever, like to also bring you some things too. You know what I mean? Like, I do believe too, like in terms of meeting people and opportunities and stuff, there's things that just fell in my lap,
Yeah,
and a lot of times too, it was not when I was like forcing something through.
always.
It was like I wasn't even thinking about it. I didn't even realize that I needed that or wanted that, and it fell in my lap, and then it turned out to be this like extraordinary thing that was amazing or
Yeah.
whatever. So finding that balance of like being consistent, getting my ass out of bed, getting my ass off of Instagram, and like sitting down and doing the thing,
Yeah.
and then also like taking breaks, go to the gym, eat a snack.
Yeah, no, I mean it is all totally true. And like and if I'm whittling down any like truths that I've been able to establish since moving here or having this pursuit, it's always like the best things that I have ever come my way have been from me just putting myself or things out there, like releasing stuff or putting things out there, or and asking for things when I feel like I deserve them. You know what I mean? It's like those 2 things, and it's like it never comes from me being like total 1000% hustle grind mindset where I'm like furiously emailing people. I'm like, "This doesn't work. This isn't," and I also just feel like shit when I do it. So it's just like, and the people that approach me because they like what I'm doing, always a better situation. Always like it always goes well because I'm like, "Oh yeah, you're coming to me for a reason and you know what I do." Um and yeah, but it's always, it's an ever evolving relationship with yourself to figure that out because like I still have incredibly mean tendencies to myself in terms of just productivity and stuff like that. But every once in a while I'll remember that, like, yeah, man, if you take the morning off and just have a little bit of a chill time, you get way more work done in a way shorter amount of time later in the day. and then,
Yes.
and you don't feel crazy.
Right. I think it's that work smarter, not harder thing of like,
Always.
not to throw an analogy on an analogy, but like know when to hold them and know when to fold them,
That's it. That's it.
just
You said it
just know
best.
when to call it quits. So what is like is there like a big goal or something that like you're working on or you want to work on or
Yeah, I
striving
mean,
for?
I have a bunch of goals for this year in particular. I think like I mean, right now we have the Menagerie record rolling out, and then I'm working on like a short EP for myself. I'm starting to write the second telecoms record. Um, Apart from that, just trying to get back on the road, trying to solidify like an agent situation. I would really like to get on a late night show this year, like as a musical guest. I did a spot in Jimmy Fallon like last year, but it was like for a comedy musical thing, which counts, but not really. I would like to be on as like the actual regular music guest. Uh, so yeah, I don't know. I have a bunch of like small goals that I'm trying to hit, as well as like you know make some more cash, do some more commercials, and figure all that stuff out. But yeah, I think um, yeah, just make more quality things is sort of the baseline.
Awesome. Any way I can support, let me know, and I would love to. I will hold that vision for you as well of like seeing you on a late night
That'd be
show.
rad.
Um, and Sean, thank you so much for talking with me. This is probably one of my favorite conversations that I've had so far
Oh,
on the
thank you.
podcast.
This is so nice. It was lovely
And
talking to you.
yeah, and I really love your music. It's so good, and I really like when we were at shout out to Graham Stone, like when we were at his studio, that was a magical night, and your performance was so fun and awesome, and I can't wait to see you live again. So I will definitely follow you, and hopefully, I don't know, I will be where you are, or
I'll
I
come
come to
up.
New York a lot.
I'll come up and do a bug jar or something.
Come to oh my god, I would love that. I would
Maybe
love
one
that.
day. I got a lot of friends up there. We'll see. That'd be fun.
Yeah. Yes, please come to the bug jar. And before we go, will you let people know how can people follow you or find you and your music?
You can just find me anywhere at Sean McVerry, my name, SeanMcverry, or Telecoms is my band, Telecoms with an S. Yeah, I mean, Google that, you'll be able to find it all.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much, Sean,
Yeah,
and
thank you.
hopefully I'll come see you play very soon.
That sounds good. Thanks, Nat.
Hey there. Thank you so much for joining our podcast today. I hope you really enjoyed it. If you would consider liking, subscribing, and even leaving us a comment. This way, it will help us to keep the podcast alive and continue to bring you some really awesome interviews and nuggets of creative wisdom. So, thank you again for checking us out. I'll see you next time.